All welcome. I'm very pleased to be here. I will talk about the significance of natural will of the mentally incapable persons within medical interventions related to sexual integrity. As you know, as mentally incapable persons are legally incompetent, they are represented by a legal representative, and strictly personal rights cannot be exercised by another one principally. I mean, the rights related to personality can be exercised by only the involved person. On the other hand, relative strictly personal rights can be exercised by the legal representative to protect the interest of the incompetent persons. If a medical treatment is vital and urgent for the health, the right to consent is considered as a relative strictly personal right. In other words, they can be exercised by the legal representative, although it is a right to personality. Although it is a strictly personal right, they can be exercised by the legal representative. The mentally incapable persons can be divided into two groups, the minors and persons with mental disability. Their status are different from each other because the minors are expected to be competent to self-determination, unlike persons with mental disabilities. If the medical treatment can be postponed, the minor will gain capacity and will be able to decide to consent or refuse the medical treatment. By the way, he or she will be competent to self-determination. But persons with mental disabilities are not expected to gain the capacity, and some of them never had capacity in the past. Because of that, the legal representatives have much more authority to decide on behalf of these incompetent persons. This actual and legal statement leaves such a discretionary area that the status of being subject is jeopardized. For instance, exposing a child with Down syndrome to cosmetic surgery in order to make her or him look like children without Down syndrome, or exposing a woman with mental disability to sterilization constitutes a discriminative attitude. Mentally incapable persons have the right to autonomy like others. I must say that in this concern, as the treatment becomes less urgent and vital, the expected autonomy, the right to self-determination, should be more respectfully protected. If there is incapacity because of minority or congenital mental disability, substitute judgment is not possible. In this case, the sole remedy to respect patients' wishes and human dignity is taking natural will into consideration. I define natural will because it is used in German and Swiss and Turkish literature. It means the will of mentally incapable persons because their conscience are available, but they don't have capacity. The patient's feelings, anxiety, tendencies are very essential because they are alive. Any involuntary treatment can be undertaken just in order to prevent someone from a serious harm risk as a last remedy. The Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities remarks that the best interpretation of will and preferences must replace the best interest determinations to ensure that persons with disabilities enjoy the right to legal capacity on an equal basis with others. Decisions about interventions in organs and tissues related to gender identity originate not only upon medical necessity, but also psychological factors, personality, and identity. For these reasons, interventions related to sexual and reproductive organs can be specified as core privacy. In this context, abortion, sterilization, circumcision, and also genital surgeries on intersex infants can be exemplified. Among them, sterilization without medical necessity, which is motivated by stereotypes related to disabilities, causes disability-based discrimination. Also, it leads to gender-based discrimination because it addresses generally women. Firstly, sex assignment surgeries. Non-voluntary sex assignment surgeries are sexist because individuals are imposed to live heteronormatively. An intersex infant is subjected to irreversible genital surgery before his or her gender identity develops and he or she gains the capacity. But sex characteristics do not determine gender identity, although some health professionals consider atypical sexual characteristics as an emergency psychosocial problems. Researchers show that indicate that many intersex people reject the reassigned gender and experience reconstruction surgeries, psychosocial problems, and many treatments, hormone therapies, for example. These indicate that not being intersex, rather, these irreversible genital surgeries lead to psychosocial problems. The resolution 1952 of the Council of Europe opposes unnecessary surgical treatments which are cosmetic rather than vital for the health, referring to genital surgeries on intersex infants. Normalizing surgeries on intersex infants are interpreted within violence and degrading treatment in the literature and international law. And circumcision. Both female and male circumcision means a removal of healthy and functioning parts of the body. The Article 24 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child says that state parties shall take measures with a view to abolishing traditional practices prejudicial to the health of children. Male circumcision leads to physical and psychological harm rather than benefits for health. It is a violent act like female circumcision. It is used to emphasize masculinity, uphold heteronormativity, and patriarchal norms. Subjecting an infant to an irreversible genital surgery for beliefs of parents violates freedom of religion and belief, and also the right to autonomy and bodily integrity. Postponing the circumcision until the time when he can decide himself would comply the right to self-determination. In common, sterilization without medical necessity, circumcision without medical necessity, and gender assignment surgeries are not urgent for health. Abortion is a bit different because the pregnant woman has to take decision until a specific phase of pregnancy. If the legal representative gives consent to abortion, but if the pregnant woman doesn't want to have an abortion, the bodily autonomy cannot be disregarded even if she has no capacity. What about if the pregnant refuses to stay pregnant? In other words, if the pregnant wants to have an abortion, but if the legal representative doesn't want to give consent to abortion. I think bodily integrity cannot be violated forcibly, or the pregnant woman cannot be forced to continue to bear. In an extremely personal issue, there is not any reasonable argument to dominate pregnant women. Decision-making on abortion may become an instrument of gender-based violence. A competent woman can have an abortion arbitrarily, so there is no reason to justify depriving incapable women of this right just because of incapacity. All interventions related to sexual integrity are irreversible. Gender identity and sexuality are such matters that only the involved person can decide or herself or himself. Motivations which lead the legal representative to give consent to unnecessary and non-emergency interventions are extremely subjective and irrational, like customs, beliefs, or gender stereotypes. Therefore, the natural will of the incompetent person shall be preferred to the substitute judgments on behalf of the incompetent person. Indeed, according to an act within continuing power of attorneys in California, the attorneys are prohibited to take decision on behalf of the incompetent about abortion and sterilization. The aim of requiring capacity to validate the declarations of will is only to prevent the incompetent person from abuse. The lack of capacity doesn't mean that the competency to decide on such matters has been transferred to the legal representative. In interventions related to sexual integrity, imposing a lifestyle upon worldviews and beliefs of the parents or custodian, a legal representative becomes prominent rather than preventing abuse. In interventions related to sexual integrity, the right to consent is such an absolute, strictly personal right that those interventions cannot be undertaken unless the patient requests so. As well, the right to consent to just aesthetic surgeries, clinical experiments, and irreversible organ donations is also an absolute, strictly personal right. There is not any prevailing personal interest of the involved person. There is not any risk of harm if it is not attempted. An incompetent child should not be subjected to an unnecessary intervention by removing healthy parts of his or her intimate genital organs. In this regard, the child's sense of bodily integrity should be taken into consideration. Lastly, as the benefit and urgency of the medical intervention diminishes, the natural will's force and effect will strengthen and become the deciding factor. Thank you for listening.